Welcome to the Rodcast with Rod Turner, the show all about real estate. We discuss everything that affects asset-backed businesses, investments, and go deep into the details with some of the best in the business.
Hello everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Rodcast. Today, I'm especially excited to welcome our guest, who is the CEO of Birchgrove, an assisted living company. So it gives me great pleasure to welcome Honor Barratt. Honor, welcome.
I am even more excited than you, Rod.
So Honor, look, give us some background about yourself, your career, and what led you to become the CEO of an assisted living company?
Yeah, because it's not, I don't know if any of us end up in later living intentionally. It's where we end up when life has taken us there. So my entire career prior to this was in film and TV, and which was fatuous and gratuitous and fun. I probably spent too much time working for Rupert Murdoch, which now in my later years I realise is the wrong thing to do. But at the time, you're like, okay, this is great. But I sold that agency to Octopus Private Equity House, and I stayed working with Octopus, running the agency for 7 super happy years. I really enjoyed running a business that was owned by private equity. It's like a different discipline, isn't it? It stretches you to be better. You can't just make it up as you go along. And then they asked me to go and look at one of their portfolio companies, which was a retirement community down in the West Country, which I was particularly unexcited about, and went there and within 90 minutes decided, fuck, this is it. This is what I should have been doing my whole life. So drove back to London, did an MBO on the rest of the agency, and haven't looked back since.
What was it about that visit that kind of made you think, that made everything kind of click?
If I'm honest, the journey had probably started a bit earlier, where as a young woman moving to London, bought my first house, moved in, and an old bird over the road called Deirdre trotted across with a bottle of ice-cold Riesling and welcomed me to the street. And so she became like my best friend. She was 72 at the time. And then over time, get married, have kids, all of that it's hard. It's brutal being married. It's brutal bringing up children. It's miserable and boring and shitty. And every time I wanted to abort, she would trot back over the road and she'd say, no, come on, Honor, stay in your marriage. You can do this. And she was this beautiful voice of experience in my life. And going down the M4 to look at this community in the West Country was like, oh my God, I'm like surrounded by Deirdres. The depth of the experience and the wisdom and that ability to keep you calm was like there in abundance. Their company is so much fun that I thought, I can make money out of this. It's amazing.
And what would you say you learned? You kind of mentioned obviously about working for a private equity house and why that's different to say running your own business. What were some of the things that taught you?
So you discipline, and accountability. You cannot take someone else's money without being accountable for it. It literally is no such thing as a free lunch. And so it was uncomfortable at first because, you take their money and then they're telling you we want this. And they actually got me to get rid of my finance boy who I adored and replaced it with a CFO. And I was like, fucking hell, I love that boy. And he was replaced by someone who was amazing. So it was like a step up. Octopus made me step it up. I went to Wharton and I did an advanced management program there. I went to INSEAD and did a bit of finance there. I was like, oh God, they keep using acronyms. I don't know what this is. I don't understand what they're talking about. And I went to Harvard and I did a course there. And so I came out of it going, oh, okay, now I get it. Like, I know now how to run a business. Even weird things like debt is good. Your whole life you're told not to borrow money, and then you get here and you go, oh, okay, the more you borrow, the better.
Well, that's pretty important for private equity, isn't it?
But prior to running your own business, you're really proud. I don't have an overdraft. It's funny. So it was a massive step up. I would say culturally it was quite hard to run a creative agency with that discipline. And that was an uncomfortable relationship for the creatives in the industry. For me, as someone who enjoys business but who wants to learn more, it was fantastic. But I don't actually think it was the right thing to do for the agency. I mean, that's how it panned out. It wasn't the right thing to do. creative agencies being that leveraged. It's hard.
And I mean, look, obviously, being a creative career, and suddenly you're pushed into this very kind of finance-focused kind of role. What were some of the transferable skills that you took, and what were some of the new skills that you had to kind of pick up in order to thrive there?
I would say in TV, we are incredibly insight-driven. I wasn't working in like super posh documentaries or long films. I was working in like 30-second hits, and in a 30-second hit, you have to have one insight. And you have to be really, really incisive with that. And sometimes when I come into property, or particularly later living, people say, oh, well, the customer, they want a swimming pool and they want somewhere to live and they're choosing it for a lifestyle, and they just throw shit at the wall. Like, I'm just going to, what sticks? Whereas I think we at Birchgrove are like super single-minded. And I think that maybe came from the discipline of TV, that we were always told if you had an idea, you had to draw the poster for it. And if you can't make it work on a poster, it's too complicated. And I think I bring that discipline. Maybe the other thing, my amazing business partner at the time at the agency always said, if you ask a committee to design a racehorse, you'll get a camel. And so we are like, nothing good ever came out of a committee. Like, that doesn't mean you can't be consultative and collaborative, but at the end of the day, somebody's got to make the decision, and somebody has to live or die by that decision. You cannot cover your ass by saying, well, there were 12 of us in the room.
Yeah, someone's got to take responsibility, haven't they?
Yeah.
And look, so Birchgrove is obviously later living. How did you identify the problem that Birchgrove is finding a solution for? Can you give the listeners an idea of kind of the scale of these issues and what it is that Birchgrove does to be a solution, I guess?
Can I just, a total disclaimer, it wasn't my idea. I'm not actually the ideas girl. I'm the girl who makes the ideas happen. But so Bridges approached me because I was working in the for sale model, and buying a retirement apartment is an amazing thing to do at the age of 17. You'll live in it for 15 years. And when you sell it, you do end up giving 30% of it back to the developer. But that's fine because house price has risen. You've probably covered your costs. If you do that at 84 and then you die 18 months later, you've basically just decimated your estate by 30%. So it's not the right thing to do. And so I would constantly, in this amazing community down in the West Country, I'd meet an 83-year-old woman. There was one particular woman who just really stuck in my head called Marilyn. And she just looked at me and said, oh my God, Honor, it's amazing, but I think I've left it too late, or I think the move might kill me. And so she trotted away from me, and it didn't end up well for Marilyn. She went back to her gazillion-pound house with 5 bedrooms and died alone there. And that's not right. So Bridges, who are my backers, a social impact fund, found me and said, oh, we think the answer for Marilyn is for her to rent. And I was like, fuck, why didn't I come up with that? Like, of course. It's just so obvious when they say it, but none of us had that idea. So it was Bridges' idea that there is a whole cohort of people who are excluded from the for sale model who are picked up by the rental, which is not dissimilar to what you probably do, Rod. In the build to rent, these are people who, for either necessity or desire, don't want to buy, and so you offer them something that wasn't there before. And it's the same insight, just slightly different nuance. And then the scale of the problem, what has struck me as criminal is that in the homes of the over 65s tonight, when you and I go to bed, not together, but when you and I go to bed in our own homes, in the homes of the over 65s, there will be 9 million bedrooms that nobody is sleeping in. And yet there are 300,000 people who are technically homeless tonight. And you just think, fuck, we've got as many houses as we need. Like, we've got them all. We just need to all be in the right-sized house. And everyone who moves in with me frees up 2.3 bedrooms for the family to move in. So they've got a family home with a bit of a garden. And then these people move into that 2-bedroom flat. And, like, everybody benefits if the older people are in the right-size accommodation. So we're, like, super passionate about our position within the wider market that you're also in, Rod, and our need to go faster because we are actually a bit of a bottleneck at the top of this. We have to get those oldies into the right size accommodation. And they're not there because they're lazy or want to suck up housing. They're not there. They're there because we haven't built it for them.
Yeah, the product's not there, right?
We haven't done it. Yeah. We have not done it fast enough. We're like laggards.
What a fantastic stat, though.
2.3 bedrooms get
are
freed
opened up. Yeah, wow. That's fascinating.
Do you know what? It does actually, when you're in front of planners, it takes their breath away. They're like, oh my God. So if I give you planning permission for 75 apartments, I'll get like 140 bedrooms in the borough. Within 3 miles of your development, 140 bedrooms suddenly become available. It is amazing.
That's fantastic, isn't it? And like you mentioned, obviously, like when we think of the housing market, you've got first-time buyers that are kind of coming in and pushing it up, but also, like you said, you've got that other end of the market, where you need transactions and you need things to continually move, and it is a slow-moving market, isn't it? And
we are very slow. We are really slow. So we're not building fast enough. So us as an industry, we're tardy, and the punter takes 7 months from the first time you meet them to moving in. That's how long that decision-making process takes. So everything is torturous, but that's not a reason not to do it. It's just like a reason to double down and do it faster.
how does that compare, or how does the overall market then for senior living compare in the UK to other markets, kind of in Europe, in America, in I don't know. For some reason, I think I just assume Scandinavia's probably got their finger on the pulse on this because it seems like the type of thing they do.
They're so good at everything.
Yeah.
The stat is that people like the Australasians and the Americans, they've got a 6% penetration, and here in the UK we have a 0.6% penetration.
Wow.
So if I could do the maths, that's fairly torturous.
Yeah.
But when the Americans trot over here, they just look at us like we're so fucking dysfunctional. Like, come on, guys, get it going. It is extraordinary. So then we trot over to them and just steal all that. And they actually do share. You know what Americans are like? They're so amazing and open, and they share all their really great ideas. And they believe that we're 15 years behind now, but because they're sharing, because they were the vanguards, we will accelerate faster. So within 7 years, potentially, we were what took them 15 years. And I sort of hold on to that hope because I feel like, I reckon, Rod, you've built more units than I have. I've been doing this for 7 years. I've got 516 units. Like 7 years to do 500 units. That's tardy, isn't it?
But that's the UK. That's not bad. That's the UK in general is slow, isn't it? Because you've got these processes from concept to getting planning to getting spades in the ground and then getting the finished product. The average build to rent scheme takes 7 years to get people in there. That's the average.
Do you think, Rod, this is because I think about it all the time. Do you think it's because we're an island with not a lot of space that the competing uses for our space? Why is it? Why does it take us 7 years? And
I think, well, God knows is the answer. But one of the things it could be is we've got very, very old cities. So thousands of years. London, like we've got buildings in the Tower of London's not far away. That's over 1,000 years old. And the infrastructure within that is based on what the needs were then, horse and cart type thing, roads not wide enough, people in kind of living in very different conditions. So you're going from an infrastructure and you're trying to kind of add things in that are new, whereas you go out to America, you're in California, they'll build a city in a year because they're able to put the infrastructure in first. It's a bit like a garden city. You're putting infrastructure in first and going from there. You go out to Dubai, everything's very kind of quick. And I think that holds us back a bit. Then there are planning issues in the UK as well.
I think you're right there. You're right. The infrastructure, the newness. When you go to the US, everything's just new, isn't it? When I went to Philadelphia, I was studying at Wharton. They did us on a tour of some tenement block. They said, this was built in 1922. I was like, my house was built in 1850. They were funny, but you're absolutely right. We have legacy issues that they don't have.
I think so. There's plenty of issues around there. But what do you think are the biggest, what are the roadblocks for you and your business at the moment in creating these products? In getting units up and running, what are the biggest challenges?
If I'm completely honest, there's not that much that is difficult in property. I'd say we've all got a ton of money. Like, there's money, there's need. I don't find property difficult. We just need to work harder. So it's not difficult, but it's hard. So the biggest threat to the growth of our industry is probably somebody fucking it up. And either fucking it up so a consumer tells their girlfriend, oh, I went to a friend over there and she never managed to sell her apartment. Or Martin Lewis doing a headline of, oh, these people, service charge went up 50%. That's not great. But also, if an investor gets their fingers burnt.
So this is like what's happened with some social housing stuff, like home REITs that has just gone tits up because all the providers were essentially just being fraudulent and things like that. And that's then created this kind of like black mark against a whole industry where now, rightly so, people are very, very jittery about putting capital into those things, and lenders are jittery about lending on those assets.
You don't want to take that to IC, do you? When someone says, what's the comps?
Yeah, but it doesn't detract from the fact that there is an enormous need for those products. So it's that what you're saying about someone fucking it up is a big issue, I think, as well.
It is.
Yeah.
It's a big issue, and it should be a big issue because I'm spending pension funds money. That is pensioners' money who need a return. And if I balls it up, quite rightly, the pension funds should be cautious. That's their job.
You asked me what else is holding it back. I think, talking about pension fund investment, in the UK, pension funds do not, or in the past, have not invested heavily or proportionally as they do in other markets into residential, whether that is senior living, supported living, PRS, student. They just haven't done it. And it's starting to come in now a little bit more. And I think things like tenancies, they're always looking at long income streams, aren't they? Essentially, that's what pension
funds need.
That's the insight
in my business.
Yeah, exactly. That's what they need. And this is why they're going into build to rent, because it can happen en masse and you can do it quickly. Single family homes, that's a tough one. It's a tough sell to them. They've got to deploy large amounts of capital. So I think more money is starting to look at the sector of residential where it hasn't in the UK or has been much lower than it has, which is, I don't really know the reason for that and why it would say in America is a much bigger investment class residential than it is here for a lot of those funds.
In later living, the weight of money is mostly American. The money that's coming into Birchgrove through our social impact fund is Manchester City Council, Liverpool Council, EA, and they understand the responsibility of their money to make positive change, don't they? And that's not a gratuitous decision, where can I make the most amount of money? It's where can I responsibly invest my money to make the world a better place? And I love that.
I think the way in which people look at investment changes over time. Like, when I started out, I was all about, returns versus risk versus kind of time and effort and things like that. And then you kind of realise that we've all got an end date here. Like, there's going to come a time where we're not around.
You're going to end up living in mine.
Yeah, well, hopefully they sound great. But I mean, what then are we leaving behind, and what impact are we having? I guess when you're working with an impact fund, how are you measuring impact? How do you measure the impact that you're having on your customer, on the environment, in general? And obviously, if you've got a fund backing you, I'm sure they've got metrics of impact and things like that as well.
They do, but they may be ticking boxes somewhere behind my back, but they are not asking me to tick boxes.
Sure.
They are bullying me, cajoling me, encouraging me, shouting at me, go harder, do it better. So on my board is the founder of Bridges, Phil Newborough, and he's like this big fucking bear of bloat, and you don't know whether he's going to hug you or squeeze you to death, like you're always slightly on edge. And he will say things like, "Oh, no, I'm not putting any money in a business that doesn't pay living wage." So you're like, "Oh, fuck, better get that sorted."
Yeah.
"I'm not going to invest in a building that's not EPCA." So they force us to be better. I think that they probably are measuring me at some point in the background, but it's not done in a way that I'm like resentful.
Well, it's what does better mean, right? And it's understanding that, and it's like you say, living wage and
some understood metrics that they.
Yeah.
But do you know what? When he does it to us, he's doing it because his heart is in the right place, but he's doing it fundamentally because both of those measures that I just mentioned deliver EBITDA.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm selling EBITDA, and he makes my business operationally supersonic because he makes me do these ESG initiatives. It is not the icing on the cake, it's the thing that delivers operational efficiency. And they are completely convicted in that, and I think I was a bit behind the curve actually, and then they sort of showed it to me. This is how you get operational efficiency on it.
I think that is such an important point, that actually ESG and EBITDA are not mutually exclusive. We talk about ESG now as if it's this one special thing, but I mean, well, governance is how you govern a bloody company, isn't it? It's the most important thing. So it totally kind of, you get that right, by definition, governance should mean you're more profitable and you're doing better financially as well. So yeah, I think it's so important for people to kind of like step back and just remember that, isn't it? But yeah, really, really, really good point. What would you say some of the hardest or challenges have been from scaling Birchgrove then?
So in the beginning, I bet you've had this. In the beginning, I was gifted a plot of land with planning permission for a shitty sort of porter cabin next to a dual carriageway. And I was like, fuck it, that's fine. I can make something of that. And trying to get bank debt on that first, man, that was brutal. And everybody kept saying, "Oh yeah, no, I can see how this might work on it. Yeah. Come back when you've done it." And you're like, oh, shit. If I hadn't had bridges to basically fund the whole thing out of equity, we never could have got going. And that absence of comps is still so frustrating.
Well, it's proving the concept, isn't it? Once you prove the concept, you can scale.
Yes.
But it's so bloody difficult to prove the concept.
And I feel there's so many amazing young people out there with great ideas. You know, what they need is a bridges in their life. But
and how did you manage to get bridges to back that?
It was their idea.
So they had
been spending money building care homes, and because of the social impact, it was making them feel uncomfortable that they were investing in last case resort. No one chooses to be in a care home, and that for them doesn't really fit with impact. And they were like, oh, if you could actually choose the step before the care home that keeps you out of the care home, that's impactful. And that's what they did with this model. It was really interesting, isn't it? Again, how that impact made them innovate. But one of the things, like the reason I would do this podcast with you, Rod, is to just say, why the hell is everybody else sitting on the outside looking in, going, oh, that's a good idea, but they're not piling in. And I think all these great BTR and student operators, it's the same thing. It's BTR for old people. Don't be scared. Don't overthink it. Don't PowerPoint the shit out of it. It's the same thing. Just dive in, because the demographics are insane. You know, someone pays us 75 grand a year rent. The numbers are extraordinary. The numbers are that high because the bloody cost of money is so high, because no one else is in the market. If I could get some other people in the market, we'd get the yield to move. But I look at build-to-rent operators and I think you do it so beautifully. Just do it for the olds as well.
Well, I think it is build-to-rent. It's just a different thing. It's the same thing,
So why are you not doing it?
Well, funny you should say that.
Ooh, what are you doing?
Not senior living, but supported living. So we do quite a bit with disabled care, but daycare centres, so not living. And it's something, so currently looking at starting a special needs school and things like that as well. So these are all kind of, it's not the living sector, but it's other things. And look, you go through things in life and realise where there's roadblocks and go, right, we need a solution for this. So with my daughter who's got disabilities, and the whole issue around kind of education, where's going to be the right place, and in the end you're kind of, after pulling your hair out, right, let's just create it. Let's create it because it's not there. And I think that when you can identify a problem, that's almost the hardest bit. What is the problem we're finding a solution for? And then you can kind of come in and go, right, let's fix it.
And that's your insight, isn't it?
Yeah.
Your business will be so much more supercharged because it's based on an actual insight.
Yes.
There's loads of us who have built our businesses because we tried to find somewhere for mum and dad and couldn't find it. It's exactly the same experience as you.
It's a bit like, you always have these issues where it's kind of like, I always talk about professional services, and the hardest thing is knowing the questions to ask them. It's like if you go to estate planning and you try and do a will, you don't really know what are some of the traps to fall into because you haven't died. So it's what are the things you need to know? And it's only through actually having those challenges in life that you realise some of the problems. But then the next thing is being able to explain that to other people who haven't had those challenges yet, and getting their buy-in as well, which is obviously something you've experienced with that. Yeah.
But your daughter, Rod, when she realises what you've done for her, it's just going to make her so proud that, Daddy hit this roadblock and he fucking pushed it out of the way with his own
I've got
effort.
to do it now because you've called me out.
You've got to do it. And that's just going to break her. She's going to be the proudest girl. We at Birchgrove, 5 of us have our parents living. So 5 members of staff have our parents living in a Birchgrove. Because for exactly that same reason.
Fantastic.
And he just died, but my dad had dementia, and he used to trot around this community saying, "Do you know my daughter built this for me?" And he used to tell everybody. And he was really proud, just like your daughter would be.
So, in terms of raising finance, then when Bridges approached you, that was obviously, well, that thing's done. How's it been since that point? I mean, has it always been for you, right, finance actually is okay? You've mentioned the cost of capital's high, which then in turn means that the yield's got to be kind of fairly low on that. Like, how has finance impacted your business positively and negatively?
So I'm very clear that Birchgrove is only where it is because Bridges were willing to write the cheque, but also willing to hold their nerve. Like, they haven't bottled it on anything. So all our success is down to that ready access to finance. Where I stand now is I feel a bit like we are running a business that looks after the affluent. And so I'm stuck within the M25 and I'm building in areas that are inherently fairly safe. The prevailing house price is, north of 570 grand. And that is fine to prove the model, but it's not going to make us happy as people to only look after the affluent. We want a Birchgrove in every town in the country, and that is about cost of finance. And today's market is not helping me with that vision that we want to roll it out.
So a problem is, for example, if I want to go and do a Birchgrove up in, I don't know, Bradford, where the end value of a unit might be £150 a square foot, you can't build for that. You've got to build, like, it's going to be much more. That's a massive barrier. Like, we've got we've converted properties we've bought properties where the rebuild value is triple what the existing value is, which is great when you have that, but it means that's a huge barrier to entry to other products coming up. So how do you get around that? How are you able to provide some of these products in those areas?
Well, I don't know, because I haven't managed to do it. I mean, I'll be interested. When you say 130 quid a square foot, blimey, it's hard, isn't it? We're fiddling with a scale, like how many old people want to live together. Currently, our average is 65 units. Our most successful one's about 78 units. Could I do 115 units? How high can I stack them? how much can I pull back the offering? Is there a Birchgrove light? But inherently, you're like, how come Bradford gets the fucking Birchgrove light? Like, why can't they have what everybody else has? I honestly don't know how we're going to do this, but I do know that those 9 million under-occupied bedrooms are not all within the M25.
Sure,
we
yeah.
we have to sort this, but I don't know. I don't know how I'm going to do it.
Because I guess if you're looking at kind of pension funds and long income models and things like that, as long as there's going to be occupancy and rates, and like you said, at the moment you're solving a problem, but you're solving a problem for the affluent. What about the people that can't do that? What's their options? And look, I get that you earn money, you're rewarded for it, and you get to do that. But there's still going to be options. It's a bit like the whole idea of everyone has a right to have a home, but owning a home is a privilege. So everyone still has a right to have later living, and like we've moved on in society. We have I guess a flaw of what we expect to be a decent home, especially in kind of later living where there are elements of care and things like that. I mean, it just I don't. Is there an argument for, I don't know, if we're doing house refurbs, there's government grants available in certain areas to bring disused properties back to life in order to then be rented to the council, for example. I mean, is there anything like that can be drawn upon to... Because, like you said, this is not just a problem in the M25.
No.
This is a UK-wide problem.
I think it goes... maybe, I don't know, does it go a little bit wider? That we all know that we're a bit stuffed because there aren't loads more younger people than, we're going to get old and nobody's contributing to the national pension pot. And so this belief that our home is our castle needs to be undone. That home needs to be liquidated to pay for your own death. And we need to get real on that. You cannot sit there and draw a pension and still live in a 600 grand house. You have to pay for your own care. And so there's a social care challenge that's coming down the track. Like, it's so funny, isn't it? Why do we think an Englishman's home is their castle? It has to have come from somewhere, but we are all absolutely wedded to this sense of home. Home is really fundamentally important to achieve happiness, isn't it? And to achieve anything in your life, you have to have that base.
Well, it's like that hierarchy of needs, isn't it?
It's shelter.
Yeah.
You need it, but when we treat it as an asset, I'm not sure it's the right thing to do. I think that asset has to be liquidated because we've got a problem coming down the track, and it's only the housing market.
Well, when you talk about retirement, we had a great episode a while ago with John Rose, who's a financial planner, and one of the great things that he explains very well is retirement is not one period. It's split up into 5 different levels of retirement that each have differing costs. So you might be, I don't know, the first bit doing lots of travelling, doing the things you like, which costs a bit of money. But then there's another level of retirement, which is kind of, you've got that end of life bit, you've got specialist care, and that's bloody expensive too. So how are you funding all those things moving forward, which is difficult?
It is, and we're also looking at, so the oldest baby boomer is turning 80 this year, and they are access to final salary pensions is really diminishing, isn't it? And that's, it's just a huge problem. You and I will only be able to pay for our later living care by selling that home. I think the good outcome there is that maybe passing down your wealth to your children actually starts to dissipate a little bit. You have to use your own assets to pay for your own death. And that might level off the haves and have-nots. That thing that children can only get on the housing market if they inherit or if their parents buy it for them, that's not right either. So there are some good things coming down the track, but our insistence on staying in our own home, owning our own home, treating it as our castle, we've probably got to wean ourselves off that.
Yeah, and it does seem to be a societal, cultural kind of thing here in the UK, probably more than anywhere else that I've seen. But I think with younger people, there is a bit more emphasis on actually, you don't need to be there. There's more people that are choosing to, especially with kind of COVID has sort of turbocharged all that, with people realising they don't necessarily need to be in certain places that they once thought and moving around a little bit. So I don't know. Yeah, maybe that might kind of
There's also a
increase that.
cute little stat. Apparently 30% of student lets are secured by the grandparent. So the grandparent is already involved in the rental market. They are using their affluence to support that. And I think, wow, they've done it at the bottom end of the market. Let's do it at the top as well.
Interesting. What would you say the biggest risks to your business model are? And what are you doing to mitigate them?
So we're back to somebody fucking it up. And the mitigation is, Rod, you will never meet a more collaborative bunch of people than us lot in later living. We are so conscious that each other's success, a rising tide is going to float all our boats. So the very simplest example is if I meet a woman in a sales suite who's turned up and she tells me, oh, I've got a girlfriend who lives in an Audley and I went and had a cup of tea with her and it was amazing. She is so much more likely to buy off me than a woman who hasn't gone to see a competitor. If she's got a girlfriend who lives in a quasi-care home and they're sitting around on brown furniture in a circle, there's no way I'm going to convert that woman because she's terrified. So the threats are somebody not doing it properly and the opportunities are all of us doing it amazingly. So we all have to be better.
What do you know now that you wished you knew when getting into property?
Actually, Rob, can you what is the difference between property and real estate?
Nothing.
Really?
To me.
On the surface, property looks like it's a bunch of blokes in gilets, you know.
Ripping.
Drinking Guinness in the South Bronx. But I think if you scratch below that surface, for me, what I've learned is property has an insane sense of purpose. Like we are all actually a little bit obsessive about sense of home, aren't we? What you're doing is really purposeful in using property to help young people. And I got to the age of 40 without realising that purpose is what it's all about. And so I've learned my life has the ability to affect change. And now I'm in a rush. Now I'm like, shit, I wasted 20 years of my life being fatuous. Now I got to make up. And I feel like right now in property, I've never been more effective, more adrenalized, more informed about what I'm doing.
So if people are sitting there in running a business but feeling, do you know what, I don't feel like I'm this, like, don't get me wrong, like the investment side, that's all going well or not, as the case may be. But how can people find their purpose if they're a bit lost? What do you think they've got to go through a challenge? They've got to go through a life event that actually makes them realise, right, this is what I need to do. Do they need to face hardship and then come out and go, right, that's it?
You and I did,
Yeah.
didn't we? I think being made redundant is, I mean, it's never happened to me, but I feel like it's probably a total gift. Being put on gardening leave, that would be a gift. I don't know whether I don't know. Do you meet young people in property who are incredibly purposeful? Yes, I do. So our business in Mill Hill, it's 60 units being built for us by Barratt under a C3 consent, and normally I'm a C2. And so we've looked at that and go, oh, what's the opportunities of a C3 consent? The fill-up rate of old people is so slow because it takes ages for them to think about it. So we're going to pop a load of students and postgrads in the middle of the building on a 9-month student let, so that when the olds move in, they're like, oh my God, look at all these young people trotting through reception. I'm having my lamb lunch next to some girl who's working from home and having a cappuccino. And so I was like, oh, I really want to do that. And then I met this amazing young woman from Hyber. Her name's Hannah. You should totally get her on. She's like a child. She's like 24. She went to Bristol University and experienced what it's like to be a student with a sort of absentee, shitty landlord rather than the student lets. And she felt that was so woeful. She set up this business called Hyber, which is trying to connect responsible students who pay their rent and have good credit scores with responsible landlords who are going to turn up and change the boiler.
Fix things, yeah.
And so she started this business called Hyber, which is like a riff off hibernation. And she is so purposeful because she had such a shitty experience at Bristol. And so now she's going to ram a load of students in the middle of my lot. I've got the olds who are moving in, and then we've got another 21 women who are slightly homeless, so we're popping them in. This whole building is going to be jumping.
Amazing.
And it's an experiment.
Well, do you know what I was going to ask, actually? How do you, like, when you're getting that culture, if you've all got the same kind of tenancy type, does that create a community? Don't you need a few old people, a few young people, a few families, a few single people, kind of that sort of thing, to create a community, or do you find it works fine just getting them all in?
Yeah, so us and students, we're ghettoised, aren't we? It's a very homogenous community. Some people like that. Some people like that they trust everybody that they're getting in a lift in is people, like-minded people. We're all different. Like you and I, as different as we are now, we're going to be that different when we're over 65. And so you might say, oh, I really want to mix it all up. And I might say, oh, I just want a load of people who like maths club. Yeah. And we need to build lots of different things for lots of different people and not shove everybody in a sort of one-size-fits-all.
What advice would you give to someone who is looking to get into this space?
When you come in, you will never leave. Because it is like crack. These old people are very addictive. So just be prepared. This will be your career for the rest of your life. I've just taken 2 lads on. One, Marcus, joined me last year from the collective. Yep. And I think he took the job with me like, shit, I need a job. And now, honestly, can't believe how addicted. He has a relationship with a woman called Hazel, who's like 84. He's like, oh my God, I'd do anything for her. And he's realised, old people are the future. So be prepared that you will never leave us. And secondly, don't overthink it. It is. You will have the most communicative, grateful, well-funded, adorable customer. Just fucking get on with it.
Fantastic. And you mentioned you went to various kind of universities, did courses. What education do you think really helped to give you kind of a platform into the career?
I think those courses were about me realising that no one else in the room understood what was going on either. I think at the beginning of real estate, I was like, shit, why does everybody understand this? I don't understand. What's a yield? I don't understand it. So now I understand that. It's less intimidating. But that's fairly simple, isn't it? It's like a week, learn what the acronyms are. And then do you think you need a bit of pig-headedness, which has nothing to do with education and everything to do with drive and purpose, and anybody can do it?
It's difficult, isn't it? Because it goes back to that thing of how do you motivate yourself? And one of the great things about real estate is that it doesn't require a lot of people to generate certain amounts of capital, but that's also a negative because it can be very lonely trying to bounce ideas off people and things like that, especially if you're in an SME kind of business. It might be one-man bands and things like that, and that can be a difficult place because you get so focused in on things that you don't see the wood for the trees, and intrinsic motivation is tough. Like,
are you talking from experience here?
Yeah, definitely. Like it can be difficult to keep driven, and keep focused. So I think what you need is you need focus, you need grit because to get over the hurdles, but you also need that whole kind of the passion and the purpose underlines all of that, and that's what keeps it going. And it can be tough. Whereas if you're going out and seeing people and you've got, I don't know, you're seeing Hazel and that sort of thing, then that does kind of keep you motivated. If you're on your own, it is difficult.
We for the first 6 years we didn't have a head office, and we just either worked on the building sites or we worked with the olds, and so they're just dripping insight into your ear all day long. You're trying to desperately type and they're shoving Victoria Sandwich, but they're giving you loads of insight. And then when Marcus from the collective joined, he was like, right, this is completely unsustainable. We need an office. But for the first 6 years, I was never alone. I was just always in the company of olds.
Brilliant. This is the last question that we try and ask everyone. So what is the kindest thing someone has ever done for you in business?
Oh my God, that's such a nice question. Let me just preface it by saying I do believe that Deborah Udolph of Say is the kindest woman in property and will always help another woman. So she's amazing. But during COVID, obviously looking after communities of old people, fairly hardcore, and we moved in on site, and Bridges were amazing, and they pulled together this Zoom call of all their CEOs and instead, just share your experiences, like who's drowning over there, like what's happening. So we all talked, and I was sitting there in Sidcup in our first development, and I said, I've had this disposable mask on for 10 days and it stinks. I can smell my own breath. I'm feeling really low. And about 4 hours later, an Uber driver appeared at the front of the building, and he had a little box, and inside was a note. And she said, it's from Maggie at Bridges. And she said, my sister lives in Hong Kong. She sent me 100 masks. I've taken one, and the rest are for you. And it just broke me, because at that moment, that's exactly what I needed. And that sense of sacrifice, what she did for me that day, just got me through 9 months of lockdown. And Maggie, just like that, is extraordinary level of kindness.
And I guess it probably makes you so much more aware of and empathetic to other people when they might be in those situations, to the impact that gestures can have on them as well. Yeah.
And actually, that is the definition of impact, isn't it? Yeah. We give it a capital I and we think it's something that we report on, but what she did for me, that is the value of having an impact investor, because she did that. Good for her.
Fantastic. So, Honor, this has been a really great conversation. I've really enjoyed having a chat with you. If people want to find out more about Birchgrove, what should they do?
Well, my email address is honor@birchgrove.life. I say yes to everything. So if you invite me somewhere, I want to meet, want to have coffee, want to see a community, have a good idea, have a plot of land. I tell you, though, Rod, right now I'm trying to build towers. No, buy them. So I'm looking for developers who have 75 units somewhere within the M25 that they don't want to sell individually. That I'll just take the whole block. So anybody out there who has that, that's my email address. I'd love a block. I'd love some towers. I want to move faster. Anybody who's got 75 units, please get in touch.
Fantastic. Brilliant. Thanks so much. And hopefully we can get you on again soon.
I loved it. Thank
Cheers.
you.